Right, good evening everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to tonight's Cabinet meeting. For those observing, I am Councillor Paul Bradley, Deputy Leader of the Dudley Council, and I will be chairing this evening's meeting. Before we begin, I'd like to just cover some few housekeeping points. There are no planned fire alarms, so if the fire alarm does sound, please treat it as a real and follow the instructions of staff to evacuate the building safely. Please note that this meeting will be recorded and will be made available on our YouTube channel. Members wishing to speak should raise their hands to indicate that they would like to contribute. And finally, please remember to use the microphones when speaking so everyone can hear clearly. Thank you. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. We have received apologies from Councillors Ian Bevan, Patrick Harley and Pete Lowe. Are there any further apologies for absence?
Chair, I understand Councillor Atkins is running late and also Councillor Andrea Goddard is online. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, Councillor Ellen Cobb is running late. And apologies from Councillor Sahota.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare under the Members' Code of Conduct? No. Agenda item 3, minutes. I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of September 2025 be confirmed as a correct record and signed. Does the Cabinet agree? Agenda item 4. 2025-26 Capital and Budget Monitoring Report as at Q2. I call on Councillor Steve Clark to present the report and move the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is the Q2 monitoring report for the 2025-26 financial year. It covers our revenue and capital budgets, the school budget and the housing revenue account. It also updates Cabinet on savings delivery and our reserves position. To start with, revenue. We are currently forecasting an overspend of 1.3 million. That is a £1.2 million improvement since Q1, when the forecast was 2.5 million. This is positive, but there are still pressures, particularly in children's services. Children's placements alone are forecasting an overspend of £6 million. This remains a key risk and will be closely monitored for the rest of the year. We also have overspends in finance and legal due to the costs of agency and locum staff. These pressures are being offset by underspends elsewhere, savings in treasury management and capital financing, maximisation of grants, vacancy savings, and a range of other efficiencies. Full details are in section 7 of the report. Turning to the savings delivery, performance is strong. 88% of all the savings are either on track or already delivered. In financial terms, that means that of the £61.1 million agreed, £55.7 million has been delivered or is expected to be delivered. We are working to reach 100% in year, and where original savings can't be achieved, mitigations are being put in place, and Appendix A sets out the full analysis. The housing revenue account is forecasting a balanced position. Saving in staff and other efficiencies have allowed more revenue budget to be used to support planned capital works, which in turn reduces the need for additional borrowing. On the dedicated schools grant, the high needs budget remains under significant pressure. It is forecasted to overspend by 15.7 million, taking the cumulative deficit to 60.2 million by the end of the year. Dudley is not alone in this. Many councils are facing similar high needs pressures. Our financial resilience remains important, and the report sets out the reserves position in detail, with further information in Appendix B. Overall reserves are forecasted to be 42.4 million by the end of the year. This is a much stronger position than when the budget was set. It includes the planned £5 million contribution agreed as part of the 2025-26 budget, plus an additional 2.5 million from contingency that is no longer required. So overall, while there is an improvement in parts of the revenue position, there are still risks. These continue to be closely monitored, and we are taking corrective action towards a balanced position by the end of the year. The pay cost control boards and the value for money boards remain in place to maintain financial discipline. And the contingency budget created for demand pressures will also support our aim of achieving a balance. Finally, on capital, the capital programme for 2025-26 totals 180.8 million. By the end of Q2, 37.1 million has been spent, and we are forecasting a total spend of 143.4 million by the end of the year. A summary is provided in Appendix C. Cabinet is asked to note the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Is there a seconder?
Seconded, Chair.
Right, thank you. Open it up to the opposition and Cabinet. Does anyone wish to speak on this item? Councillor Aston.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to the Cabinet member. I acknowledge the reduction in the overspend this year. An improving revenue position is obviously welcome. A council on a more sustainable financial footing is of course welcome. But I think it's really important that while we're collectively celebrating achieving savings, it's incumbent on all of us to remember that each saving is actually a cut. 61.1 million of them, in fact. Cuts to council services, often to the most vulnerable members of our community, and cuts to staff with the obvious pressure on those who remain. A quick question on Appendix A, and with specific reference to the welfare rights team, where we've discussed this widely during the budget process with an amendment to the budget and a stay of execution for the welfare rights team, which I believe that time has now ended. The welfare rights team reduction to a statutory service is mentioned twice in the table. The first with a blue rag rating, which I've now understood that means that money is banked. But then further down the table with a red rag rating, I'm just trying to get my head around that fact. There were two different numbers as well. So if anyone can shed any light, why it's down there twice, and the current position, where are we at the moment with regards to the welfare rights team and its existence? Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And you'll see that it doesn't relate just to the welfare rights. You probably see a number of savings that might be categorised in two different ways. What we want to do is to make sure that we're as transparent as possible and that Cabinet gets a sense of what's actually banked and what's on track. And the figure that's in there in terms of blue, we know that that's actually delivered. The total saving was bigger than that. So the total saving will be 150,000. What we're saying is that we can safely deliver the 71,000. The 79,000 is still at risk. of not being delivered. So what we don't want to do is skew the delivery of the savings by showing everything as red when we know that there's a part of that saving that will be delivered. So it's difficult presentation-wise, and it might be something that we can take away and look at, but we're trying to be as transparent and open in terms of progress against those savings targets.
If I come back on this, in relation to the second part of your point, Councillor Aston, about the welfare rights provision and the team, I'm going to ask Emma Matthews, the Director of Adult Social Care, to provide a written response to you. She is on her way, but she's running late because of traffic, so she would have been able to answer that. So if that's okay. But so you had two parts. One is, and the point that Lisa made about the way the budget is broken down, that was a comment that Councillor Cowell made last time as well. But we are trying to be transparent and show you every penny and its status in real time. But in terms of the team, where it is, and the plans to make sure the provision is maintained, Emma will have the up-to-date provision on that, so I'll get that in writing to you. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Aston. Councillor Casey?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to Councillor Clark for the report and his ever-optimistic view on the finances of this council. I mean, for me, I still think it's a very precarious situation. I think Councillor Aston outlined some of the things that I was going to outline as well there, but given that savings are very much dependent on not recruiting to currently unfilled vacancies across a range of directorates and teams. I mean, 35 unfilled vacancies in the Environment Directorate alone, and you know, that is considerable, and it's clearly having an impact on services and delivery, in my opinion. So it's not really sustainable in the long term, I don't think, in reality. For me, one of the main issues I wanted to raise on this was the parking charges in particular. Now, we see in the report there's an under-recovery of car park income of £759,000 due to higher than anticipated reduction on ticket sales, essentially, which is a massive number for the council not to have got in. We heard before that, you know, we're £150,000 down on memberships at places like Duncan Edwards Leisure Centre. Clearly, the parking's had a massive impact there. And in reality, what this all adds up to is less people in the town centre, less people in the leisure centres. The impact's clear if you walk around the town centre. And from the figures that we've got here tonight, this just seems like a complete and utter failure. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Casey. If we look at what we've done in terms of the savings so far, we're halfway through the year and we've saved just over 88% of the actual savings that we anticipated when we set the budget last year, which is formidable. It really is. It's exceptional. As far as the parking is concerned, I accept what you're saying, and we have actually looked at that, and we have put out a model to say that we acknowledge the fact that we are losing business in the town centre, so therefore we have reduced the charges for parking, as you've probably seen in the press over the last month or so.
As it's on this question, Councillor Phipps.
Yeah, thank you. So when it comes to the car parking charges, the figures that you see are all representing an increase in income to the council based on the position from last year. So what you're seeing isn't a loss in income for the council due to the increased car parking charges. What we're actually getting in is more income from car parking charges than what we had in the previous years where the 2 hours was offered free. The figures that you're quoting is a technical arrangement whereby, because of the amount of income that was forecast is higher than the income that has been received, then that shows up as a pressure on the budget, which is what Steve was talking about in terms of being addressed with the new car parking charges, which we always said that we would do when we were able to do so. And thanks to the significant savings that we've made already this year, we were able to put essentially council taxpayers' money back towards subsidising car parking for people coming into the towns. But it's not right to say, and whether this was what you were meaning or not, I think it's very clear. It's really important that we make it clear. We have got more money into the council through the car parking charges than what we had before. But it's not a case that we've lost money based on those figures at all.
Thanks, Jay. No, I understand what you're saying there, Councillor Phipps, but the money was always going to go up because the parking charges were reintroduced instead of the free period. The issue is that the forecast is £759,000 down on what it should be, which means there's less people parking in the town centres, less people shopping in the town centres because of the parking charges. Now, it's okay saying that we've reduced parking charges now, but the people that have not come to the town centre because of this will not potentially come back. You will not get those people back even with the reduction in the parking charges as you've done. The issue is, of course, the funding was always going to go up because you've reintroduced the parking charges. So that's a sort of given because of what you've done. The issue is there's less people because there's less ticket sales, and that's where the money that you were anticipating has not come in. That's the main issue for me.
And it's an issue that you're right to highlight, and nobody on this side will disagree with you, because we all said that this would happen last year. None of us went into this with our eyes closed. We all knew that by increasing car parking charges, there was going to be less people that came and used the car parks. However, what I do take exception to is the party that was trying its best to ensure that we scrapped the 2 hours free parking, then complaining that we did so. Now, you are absolutely right to highlight the estimation of the budget figures. It's something that we highlighted last year, and it's now in there for everybody to see. But we're taking actions on that to address it, and we're giving something back because we've got the headroom to be able to do so now. However, it is rich from the Labour Party to say that this has been a failure, because the Labour Party would have done it many years before we were forced to do it due to the budget position, thanks to the social care costs. And I think that's really important for people to understand at home, if there is anybody out there watching.
Right, thank you. Councillor Ali?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to make any comment. I just to say it was more because of incompetence and mismanagement, because of the financial mess this council got itself into, and that's why local people are suffering now. £61 million of cuts. People are struggling, and we've already touched on the quality of service will be impacted. The service delivery will be impacted. So, it isn't rich coming from us. It's yourselves who have cut the funding, and it's unacceptable for people to be suffering from that.
Right, I do disagree with that. Just a couple of years ago, we were facing 114. It's not a failure of an administration failure that we've turned it round and actually made savings of the original that was 42 million. And now we're actually looking at 56.3 million savings. I think personally that the administration and our workforce in particular have done very well. Councillor Priest.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. First one on that. So the report notes that the statutory override for the dedicated schools grant is only extended until 2028. So does the council have a plan for when that statutory override ends? And will we just be back in the same position we were in a year ago, 2 years ago, where the council's at risk of a Section 114 notice?
Thank you, Councillor Priest. The override this is a problem that councils are having throughout the UK. Our debt is not as big as many other councils, and it's what successive governments have done. Both the Conservatives and now the Labour are doing is just kicking that can down the road. It's a problem that needs to be addressed. It isn't being addressed by government. It needs to be addressed. We are looking at that internally to see how we can cover that. And it's the fact that we are making the savings means that we are getting close. But the reality is it's increased by £15.1 million this year alone. And we're only putting £5 million back in reserve each year. So even though we're putting stuff back in reserve, it's still not going to cover the amount of deficit that we've got. So we do need central government to be stepping in to this to make sure that we can sort this problem out. But it was successive governments have yet not sorted it out, but they are letting us put it on our balance sheet. which again could cause a problem later down the line, because if we have to still cover that amount of debt. So if we are covering that debt and it is increasing at a level that it is due, then we're going to make sure we have to have provision in place in order to cover that debt. And so from our point of view, we do need government to look at it as soon as possible, because it's an area where not only us, but there'll be many other councils facing real hardship because of that dedicated schools grant.
Thank you. Did you want to come back, Ryan?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions, if that's all right.
Hang on then. As it's on the same question, Councillor Little.
Yeah, Councillor Priest, I was just sort of going to come in and reiterate what Councillor Clark has said there, obviously being the portfolio holder for that. Everything, as Councillor Clark has just said, just to say that, that there is a white paper expected, as you probably know, from government at the moment. It is something that, as the whole of children's services are anticipating, as is the whole of the rest of the country. What would ask everybody to do is to make sure that when you're having conversations, you're speaking anywhere into government, that you're lobbying on the children of Dudley's behalf and asking for that white paper to come forward with, and work with us locally to be able to, when that pay control does come to an end, it needs to be something that isn't just going to be a massive impact. We've got to deal with the financial situation that exists today across the country, but it's something that can't be avoided. So anything that you're doing in conversations with your parties, and feed that up into government to make sure that that white paper does come, and does come with constructive ways of us addressing those shortfalls.
Thank you. And rest, I accept that. I know that this is a huge issue for local authorities across the country. A lot of it was around the contingencies that we're putting in, because I think the history of the last few years is, regardless of what party's in government, local government is always the one that gets kicked and cut. So it does worry me that it sounds like, actually, if government presses ahead with that override just disappearing, that we will be back in a 114 territory, as will many other local authorities across the country. So I've got a couple more questions. One is on council tax collection. So it references that there's I can't remember the exact figure, I'll have to find it where it is in the report, apologies. But there's a slight decrease in collection rates on last year. I know it's not significant, but compared to national collection rates, Dudley is well below what the national average is. Why do you think that is, and are we doing any work to change
that? Thank you, Councillor Priest. I think, in the past we have been very good at collecting this. Whether this is part, I mean, we're not in the bottom area of collection, so we're actually doing okay. We're not doing brilliantly on that, because it used to be literally 98%. I think it has dropped from that, but this is an area where we've generally been pretty good in the past. So it's an area that we're looking at, and an area that we're making sure that we're on top of, because it's obviously one of our main revenue streams. So it's very important that we do collect that.
Unless I'm misunderstanding, that is a huge drop then, because it's paragraph 26 in the report. It equates to a 54.2% collection rate. So are you saying over the last...
Just for clarification, the percentages that are reflected in the report are at a point in time. So by the time we got to period 6, we'd collected 54.2% of the annual collection. So we would assume that by the time we got to the year end, so this is not a position that forecasts us to the year end, it's a comparator at period 6, 2025, compared to period 6, 2024. So we collected 55.4% of the council tax at the end of September 24, and we've collected 54.2% at the end of September 25. So there is a reduction in the percentage, but that is not a comparator against a year-end position.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying that. And then finally, just as it's already been mentioned on the welfare rights team, we've had a council budget and a council motion that confirmed that any reduction in the welfare rights team, before any reduction in the welfare rights team, a report should be presented that identifies where that support could be found elsewhere, if not by this authority. Is Cabinet saying that they've ignored full council and pressed ahead with this cut anyway?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Priest. So the report that you're referring to is being prepared, and I'll make sure that's wrapped up in the note as well. That report is still coming because that was requested. If you remember, it's slightly behind schedule, but it is still planned to do. We haven't changed anything that council have requested or that. So those positions are fully respected, and that report will be coming.
But does that not mean that the cut has been made without the evidence that that report should have provided to justify that cut?
That's why I'm saying I'm preparing the notes. But because the Director of Adult Social Care is not here, she's got the up-to-date position. But we said in that report we'd look at how we would retain provision, but through partners and alternatives to reduce that duplication of effort that we had. So if I can just ask for you to wait for that note, and if then you need a further discussion about it, I'm happy to facilitate that. Thank you.
Councillor Aston.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick follow-up on that, and I was slightly banging on about the welfare rights team, but I think it's incredibly important point. I mean, the very fact that we've potentially cut a team that brought in £1 million worth of unclaimed benefits into this borough to then be spent locally is just, I still struggle to get my head around that. And as far as I'm aware, there is very little duplication of what that team does anymore. Anecdotally, I do understand that the members of that team, having possibly seen the writing on the wall, have actually left the authority anyway, and perhaps that accounts for the reduction in that cost, which is an incredibly sad state of affairs, but eminently understandable. Thank you.
If I can just come back on that. Actually, I'm not quite sure whether that is the case. I know a couple of them have, and they have moved on, but I think the team is still pretty much intact. But some have moved on, but that is the normal progression of staff.
Right, okay. I took that more as a comment, to be honest. As there's no one else indicating to speak, are the recommendations set out in paragraph 2 of the report agreed? That is carried. Agenda item 5, progress updates on council improvement plan. In January 2025, the council established an external improvement panel to provide external check, challenge and assurance to ensure that the financial and cultural improvements that had been identified continued at pace. This report covers progress on the key priorities to March 2026. We are part way through this important journey, and the next update report will be presented to next January to set out the 2026-27 improvement positions. Is there a seconder?
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you. I'll open it up to debate. Does anyone wish to speak on this item? Councillor Casey.
Thanks, Chair. And yeah, thank you for that. Just a quick question from me. Obviously, read the report, understanding in terms of what it's setting out around some of the progress, some of the work streams and the governance arrangements, particularly some of the external panels that have been established. My question was really just around whether we have or will have any written feedback in terms of the last MHCLG visit on this, in terms of their assessment of the progress on this bit of work, just in terms of that sort of government view on it. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Casey. So we've had our first quarterly update meeting with MHLG colleagues, and they have confirmed that they're satisfied with the progress being made, have no further actions for the council. In terms of written feedback, I'm meeting with them next week, because what we put in place with them was a monthly informal catch up to keep the dialogue going and to make sure that we could catch anything urgently. And then there's the quarterly formal feedback where the statutory officers and the chair of the improvement panel attend. We've had the first of those. So when I meet with them next week, I will discuss with them about if it is part of their process to provide written feedback. If not, I am comfortable to provide a briefing note to yourselves that I will check with MHLG to make sure they're comfortable that I can provide to you. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. As this is a cross-party improvement panel, and I do thank the members that join the meetings, it is actually quite positive. So we're looked on quite positive from the panel. So ongoing, hopefully that goes forward. Is the recommendation set out in paragraph 2 of the report agreed? That is carried. Agenda item 6, education travel support consultation outcome. I call on Councillor Wayne Little to present the report and move the recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody, and thanks for allowing me to report the. Although the title of the report here is of the Interim Director of Children's Services, just before we move on, I'd like to introduce you all to, if you haven't already, to John McElraith, who's our permanent DCS moving forward. So although he's only just joined the council, I'd like to wish him a good and long time with us and productive. So just so as you're all aware, John is the guy sat behind me. So the purpose of this report is just to provide an update on the education travel support consultation, which was agreed by Cabinet back in March, asking for to look at the following proposals, which was around increasing post-16 parental contributions, tiered travel support options for post-16 and 5 to 16-year-olds, looking at adhering to the compulsory school age as set out within the Department of Education statutory duties, and consultation around removing the option for discretion within that. There was a number of consultation methods that took place around that package of work, and the outcomes of the consultation have been outlined within the report. I'm not going to go through in great detail. I trust that you've all looked and read of those. But the changes to the increase in post-16 parental contributions, the recommendation in there is to make an increase around those. There's the tiered travel support, 15 and 16, looking at the consultation work which was co-produced through the Parent Carer Forum and other stakeholders, would consider 4 options of bus and rail, travel support allowance budgets for personal budgets and commission transport. So the idea behind that is to encourage some of our young people to use alternative means of transport to increase some of their independence around that. And then you've got the adhering to the compulsory school age and the removal of discretion. Those are 2 areas that have been changes as well. But the recommendation of the report is that the Cabinet receive and note the update on the outcomes of the educational support consultation. And it's important that I outline there that this is to receive a note, not for a decision on this, as there has been no change to current policy around this area as it is. So I'm not going to go into any further detail around that. I'm sure there'll be questions, but I move that recommend that the Cabinet receive and note the update on the outcomes of the education, travel and support consultation.
Thank you, Councillor Little. Is there a seconder?
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I'll open it up to the floor. Are there any questions on this agenda item? Councillor Mughal.
I'm reading this report, and I think there's been a lot of opposition from St Families and stuff. I'm just surprised a report has been put forward that actually disadvantages the vulnerable children of our borough. And I'm just wondering if any risk assessments were put in place before even proposing this. This is what families describe as morally wrong. And do you really think 47 responses is an adequate response or to make such decisions?
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor. Before I sort of open as well for the officers behind to sort of come in and may want to add to that, I'd just like to point out that, yeah, you do use the word ascend children. The size of that population is significantly larger than all of the people that, so what we're talking about here is a specific number of those children that use transport. Not all children who ascend, this policy doesn't apply to. So, you know, I think that's really key to put out there. Also, what is worth everybody understanding is that running alongside this as well is that the aim of Children's Services and the Council is to make sure that we've got enough provision for young people to access the schools local to them. So what we would like to see ideally in the world is that all children, SEND or mainstream, can walk to school in an easy way and have the support that they need at their local school. That's not always going to be possible, obviously. So what we are also doing is looking at the sufficiency of our offer across the whole of Dudley. That is going on in the background. I think that's worth reminding. So this isn't just an isolated thing where we're perceived to be the bogeyman and the attacking SEND children because of their transport to school. It's a small number of the amount of children we've got in the borough that are SEND, and I don't know if there's anything that anyone wants to add into that from Education Behind, or have I covered it? Okay with that? Yeah.
Right, thank you. Councillor Priest?
Thank you. Could you confirm exactly how much you plan to save from these changes? Because I haven't seen that referenced in the report.
Yeah, thank you. This report, the consultation was set out to ensure that we've got sustainable travel. What it hasn't resulted in is any child or young person not being provided with support to get to school. 83% of all children who get travel support still go to school via a taxi. So and all of those children that get support, I think in answer to your colleague's question earlier, have a personalised risk assessment to make sure that that travel support is appropriate and safe. It's also important to note as well, and just coming back to your colleague's comments earlier about the 47 responses, we engaged with the Parent Carer Forum, who are the voice of parents, and they actively engaged all parents as part of that and put a collected response in on behalf of a range of parents. The others then chose to respond separately.
Councillor Mughal, was that you were pertaining to from the last question? I do apologise.
I acknowledge what you're saying, but I think before we even put proposals like this, we need to ensure, I think the report even acknowledges some of the EHCP reports aren't done correctly. I think we need to make sure our provisions are watertight and those reports and stuff and the assessments we make on children are correct before we start making proposals that we're going to take away transport from children that desperately need it.
Yeah, I think the answer from the officers just sort of explained that there has been no removal of any of that travel support to children. It's about rationalising it and making sure that the appropriate method of travel to school isn't just we put them into a taxi for them to travel. It may be absolutely appropriate for them to be using an alternative tiered approach to that. So, you know, that hasn't happened as just previously been explained.
Councillor Priest.
So, same question again. Is this driven by a motivation for efficiency or budget savings, depending on what side you're sitting on? Or is it about making the service better? So if the answer to that is it's about efficiencies and savings, how much is the council going to be saving from this change?
I think first and foremost, from all the discussions I've had from being within the Directorate of Children's Services and Education, is that the driver isn't about saving money, although we all are sitting here talking about the need and the pressures of the budget. And what we've seen is over the years that budget pressure has been rising due to external things like the rise in provisions of people who are providing the transport, so employment costs and inflation, all those things. So it has been rising. One of the things that we need to do is rationalise that, so the appropriate travel is the first and foremost thing, so it's being utilised for the right children at the right time, and appropriately the type of transport within that. A consequence of that would be that it would hopefully have a positive impact on the budget, but this goes to the wider area of SEND sufficiency, the whole of the borough, and the national picture, where there's a constant increase in EHCPs and children looking for specialist places. So that is the first and foremost thing that it was looked at rationalising it and getting it under control and doing the right decisions for children. The budget side of it, I don't know if you want to come in and mention around any further on the budget.
Yeah, happy to do that. So there were no savings attached to this proposal. Where we have been able to address some of the challenges around, you'll appreciate this, as Councillor Little said, that this is part of a national challenge around rising numbers of children with education, health and care plans. What we've been able to do this year through our annual programme of retendering contracts, route optimisation to make sure we get the best value for our money from our routes, making sure that we've got shared routes wherever possible, that is starting to see some impact on the budget pressures that we've experienced in previous years. And your colleague's point is a very valid one about not all education, health and care plans are accurate, but it isn't our only source of information. The parent submits an application and details to us the requirement, what their need is, what their child's need is. That is supported by statements from the school and health professionals. And then we also have access to the education health care plan. And of course, if that's been reviewed recently, it's more reflective and accurate based on the child's current needs.
Thank you for that. Not a follow-up, but a separate question, so I hope that's okay. But the report only mentions children and post-16 young people with temporary illness once, and it does that in paragraph 45, where it essentially says that the council can make its own mind up on whether or not it provides transport for them. So under the new system, will the council help children with temporary illness get to school? And if the answer to that is no, given that we've heard from this that parents are worried about concerned around EHCPs being incomplete or inaccurate, is there a risk that young people with fluctuating conditions won't be able to get to school because they'll be missed off under this new system?
So before, again, I'm going to, but is that, you mentioned paragraph 45, discretionary transport support?
Yeah, so the only time where people with young people with temporary illness are referenced is in that paragraph, in that it is up to the council to decide whether or not they can be that the council will take them to school. It's not mentioned within the report on whether or not we're going to.
Okay, so just before I ask Matt to sort of come in a little bit more, and we may have some more detail on that, the discretionary thing as discussed in there, there's a framework that's been put in around that there now, where I believe before there wasn't a sort of framework to assist officers or those assessing cases with any sort of rationale as to how to apply discretion, and it was always just given, from my understanding. With that framework sort of coming in there now, I hope that would encompass, but I'm going to refer to Matt to sort of, if you've got any knowledge on that, how that discretion for temporary travel, as you outline there, because I'm not quite clear on that myself.
Yeah, so thank you for your question. So paragraph 45 in the report is a direct extract from the Department for Education guidance that local authorities adhere to when making their own transport policies, developing them. That particular section is part of the report that references the proposal to remove discretion when making decisions in regards to children's eligibility for transport. So it was almost it's either black and white, and it's not that case. That hasn't been taken forward. So children who have temporary health conditions will still be eligible for transport, and we will be able to use and continue to use discretion in our decision making at any of the stages either at the application, the review or the appeal stage.
Councillor Ali.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First of all, I've got a couple of questions, but clarification on the recommendation itself, because you said receive and note. What are we noting? Are we noting the outcome of the consultation only, or are we also noting, and you're asking for approval of implementation of increase in charges? Because that's not quite clear in the recommendation. It's quite confusing. So if you can clarify that, then I'll follow up with one or two questions.
So, as there's been no change to policy, this is the report as we read it, and the decisions about not taking forward the removal of discretionary and the adhering to compulsory school age. Those haven't been changed, and so there's been no change to policy. Therefore, and I'll look to, if you want to come in on the technical side of this, from the governance side of it, after that's why it's come through as a note rather than a look for a decision.
Yeah, just through you, Chair, and happy to clarify in terms of the overall recommendation. As printed, it is a recommendation to note. There is no formal decision being made. The report itself sets out the background in terms of what's taken place. So it is just for Cabinet to note.
Yeah, Chair, if I can just come back on that, but I'm a little confused. I might be misreading it, but in that report, there is increase in terms of the contributions which parents have to make. You know, those are low incomes and those other parents. So are you asking the Cabinet to approve those increases by noting this? Is that what is being said? Because I'm not quite clear. Because, or we're just noting that you've done the consultation, there's 47 people who came back. The consultation was not supportive or favourable of what's being presented here. So are you saying that as a result of that, you are not going to do anything? You know, the policy is as is, and you're not going to be increasing any fees, because there is, in the report, it does talk about increasing charges.
Yeah, just through you, Chair, in terms of the report and what's been outlined and the decisions that have been taken, they have been taken under delegated powers. So this report has come forward on the basis of Cabinet to note the actual outcomes. And if you look back, Councillor Ali, the Cabinet made a decision in terms of the overall consultation. So therefore, from a governance perspective, it was deemed that a report be brought back to Cabinet in terms of the overall outcome of that consultation and the forthcoming decisions, the subsequent decisions that were made as a result of that consultation.
I think it is quite confusing, and the fact that the consultation, I mean, it's nothing new. This is what the Conservative administration does. Consultation says one thing and it does another thing. So, you know, there are fees increases in this, and that needs to be brought out to the public. I mean, parents, I mean, any change in service, people no doubt are parents, carers, families will be worried. And because of the small number of people who've taken part in this, they don't know what's heading their way till the bill drops through their door saying, well, you know, you have to now pay an additional charge to transport your child. So one of the questions I want to ask is, what modelling, if any, has been done to assess how the increase in the post-16 parental contributions might impact on the take-up of post-16 education?
So just before I ask about any modelling, because I'm not sure about that, the answer to that, but just wanted to remind people that the post-16 parental contributions have had no increase since 2012. And I'll draw your eyes to the start of the report, where it looks at what the cost of providing these services are and the trajectory of which it's taking. And we're all aware of the other wider budget pressures upon the whole of children's services and education. And so to not look at and consider within CPI increases, could look at that and ask for reasonable contributions to cover the costs of that, I think it would be amiss. So the parental contributions there, as we see, had not taken place since 2012. Now the modelling, I'll ask, was there any about the impact on that, Matt? Has anything been covered on?
Yeah, there was no actual modelling undertaken. I think it's important to recognise that the proportion of children in that age range that receive education travel support is comparatively small in relation to the whole budget that we provide. Post-16 transport is not statutory enforceable in local authorities, and this is a contribution from those parents to support their child to get to their post-16 establishment. Parents can also approach the school through bursaries to get financial support towards that contribution as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. But again, I mean, it's really important to do these kind of modelling and thinking through the proposals in terms of the impact they're going to have on individuals. And clearly that hasn't been done. The other question refers to paragraph 28. It talks about the creation of a discretionary framework for use for the initial application and second stage appeal process. So can you clarify who will have the final authority to apply that discretion under this new framework? Will any local councillors be involved? Or if parents approach councillors for support, what role do we have in that? Thank you.
So again, I think it's worth bearing in mind, Councillor, that there's been no changes to the policy. So the policy is as it is now, and that there has been no changes to that. So the people that will be carrying out those assessments would be the ones that will be doing it already. I don't know if there's anything to add.
What we've worked extensively with Parent Carer Forum on co-producing the guidance that the team use and the framework that we use in the team in order to be able to assess the appropriate form of travel support. And that also includes the circumstances in which discretion would be an appropriate form of our decision making. Of course, as you're already aware, at appeal stage, that's a local authority officer panel.
I think to sum it, Chair, I'm totally bamboozled by this report. It just doesn't make any sense at all. You know, I mean, paragraph 28 is quite, we recommend the creation of a structured and transparent discretion framework to use. And, you know, the questions, it was quite simple. You know, who has the final authority to apply that discretion? Is it yourself as cabinet member? Is it the officers or the Director of Children's Services? And, or, you know, is it a group of councillors who will have a discretion when something comes that way?
For me, Councillor, it's quite clear, and I think I've been quite clear in what I've said, that the people who currently carry out the assessments of our children on how they qualify for their support on transport to school continues to be the same people that make it as now. Those are operational decisions made by people within Children's Services that deal with the case of the individual children. It's certainly not going to be me that's making a decision or using discretion on an individual family and whether they get support through this scheme to school. That's quite clear.
Councillor Rigney.
Thank you. I think it's been a long time coming a look at actual home to school transport in detail, certainly since 2016, because I've challenged this at every budget we've had since 2016. That was about saving money, but this is about a review for all children across the borough. While our most vulnerable children are affected by this, especially those with SEND and disabilities, my challenge to you is that we are already moving to establish smaller units in localities for children to attend, so they are not travelling vast hours in a taxi or a bus, or even their parents having to take them. And my challenge to you is to move that at pace so that we are not leaving any children out who are still having to travel. Many, and you know, the director will not have travelled in Dudley a great deal, but you ought to know that to get from the north to the south at peak traffic times, Councillor Phipps, I think I'm correct, is an enormous challenge to it. Taxis, buses, any car drivers at all. So if we can reduce that time that young children are sitting and young adults are sitting in taxis being moved across the borough, that's a good thing. So my challenge to you is that we move the programme for finding localised support for our children, certainly with the SEND, that that continues and moves moves alongside any policy changes or reviews. I too am a little disappointed at the number of people that replied, but I note, I think you said that at the carers forums they came with multiple views from other parents as well. So in fact we'd be having more than 47. Just so it's open to say that it isn't just a small number of people that this has been based on. And the only thing is, I think we should, when we produce any consultation, and in the past Children's Services have usually produced consultations at the middle of July and wanted it all back in by the end of August, and we've always thought that's a good way of getting just a few answers that you want. Pardon me for being a bit sceptical about that, but I've been sitting here for quite a long time in this position, actually, looking at consultations that have gone out over the summer term. So otherwise, I think we just need some clarification. There are certain passages in here where it said there will be new discretions and recommendations. I'd like to see the finished product before we pass a final say on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ridley. Yeah, on that part around the consultation and the co-design that's been done through Parent Carer Forum, as you know, we're both regular in contact with Anne and Claire and the people from there, and it is good to know that they are representing not just one voice, they are representing quite a large, wide-ranging view of parents with SEND of varying complexities. So to have them in that consultation is really reassuring that their voice is being put forward for more than just, you know, the simple on paper numbers of 46 or 34% and what have you. So yes, it is worth noting that engagement. I also do take on board your swift nudge to move at pace, and you know, through us working together, that as I outlined at the beginning of presenting this report, is an absolute driver of mine as well, to make sure that wherever we can, and we are looking at all types of buildings across the borough, to repurpose them, to retake them back into control of Children's Services, so we can provide that almost, you know, the dream would be that there's a place near to the doorstep of every child, so that travelling from north to south, where the two don't mix sometimes and the times it takes can be avoided. So yes, I take that on board, and there are lots of conversations, as you know, where we are looking to repurpose some of our buildings to be able to grow that provision for our young people.
Councillor Kassim Magal.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've heard today that, well, at least we've been told that the council haven't withdrawn transport for any children. How many parents have, as a result of the increased cost, opted no longer to take this? Because it's effectively the same thing. Whether we withdraw it or they've withdrawn it because they can't afford it anymore, it's the same thing. So how many parents have opted to no longer take the support?
From my understanding on that is this will not. I don't know if we're able to give any data on that, because it's only just coming to be implemented. So I can't answer you on how many have not on that. And again, the increases are only to the 16 plus parental contributions. It's not the whole cost of them. So those are contributions to the costs that the council already pay. And as already mentioned before, it is not every child in Dudley with special needs that needs that this affects. But I don't know if you want to answer about that, if we know of anybody that's opted out of it.
I don't have the information to hand. Councillor has said it only relates to those children post 16, not in the younger age range. But I can certainly look into that and come back to you.
Okay, I'm just slightly confused a little bit here. In the report, it says parents shared that the withdrawal of transport support has already negatively affected attendance and access. I'm confused. You're saying it hasn't happened, but they're saying it's already impacting some, which is true.
Can you point out where that is that you're referring to? Is that feedback from a parent, or is it something that which part of the report, just so I can see on that?
It's section 27. 27C.
So from my reading of that again, I haven't committed this all to memory, but it talks about key themes identified. So I'm not sure that if that's a parent's response or comment there, how that then translates into the data, as already said by Matt behind. We can look at, I haven't got the data around that. These are, so are you looking at the key themes, A, strong opposition across respondents? So this was through consultation, so I don't know how that could have affected the future of, because consultation is about doing it before and consultation. So those may be words that have been used, or in discriminative morally wrong, but those are talking about a point in the future. I don't know how that would then translate.
Is this not your report? If it's your report, you put it in the report, and this is a key theme. So it's not one parent saying it, it's multiple parents. If it's a key theme, it's not a one-off. Do you not read your reports?
Yeah. The reports are read, but like I'm making the point of this was during consultation. So you're asking now, as a result of what we're talking about tonight, what has happened because of that. Those are consultations, so it hadn't happened at that stage. So it kind of give you data for the future, but I'm going to refer to. No?
Yeah, thank you. And I think I'll provide some clarity on this section for you, Councillor Morgall. That particular part of the report is referring to the consultation question about adhering to compulsory school age for children entering reception, which hasn't been taken forward. The comments that parents made were in relation to a previous consultation that happened in 23-24, where the council made a decision to cease providing transport for children in nursery provision, and that is specifically what that parent's relating to. Because it was comments that parents had made back. But it was what the reference was that for is prior to the previous transport policy, prior to April 24, provided support for children who were under certain circumstances who were going to nursery. Council made the decision to cease that because there's no statutory requirement to have to do that. This proposal could have risked, in the parents' views, children attending reception, and they were making the link between that proposal and a previous policy decision that was made under the previous consultation. Clearly listening to parents' views around that informed our decision not to take that forward.
Right, the monitoring officer would like to just come in just to wrap it up.
Yeah, just through you, Chair, just to address the overall question in terms of the body of the report, it sets out the key themes identified in terms of the consultation. That was one of the key objectives of the report. So it is just feeding back in terms of the overall consultation responses rather than an actual decision being made as a result of the consultation.
Right. There are no more indicators to speak. Is the recommendation set out in paragraph 2 of the report agreed? Thank you. Agenda item 7, to report any issues arising from scrutiny committees. I don't see any chairs of scrutiny committees, so... Oh. That's okay. Right, thank you. Agenda item 8, There are no questions to be considered under the Cabinet Procedure Rule 2.5. However, we have an urgent item of business under Section 100B 4B of the Local Government Act 1972. I am of the opinion that the report of the Interim Director of Adult Social Care and of the 2025-26 Better Care Fund Partnership Agreement, Section 75 Agreement, should be considered at this meeting as an urgent item of business. The reason for urgency is the need to sign the agreement without any further delay as set out in the report. Bear with me. The purpose of this report is to seek Cabinet approval for the Council to enter in the 2025-2026 Better Care Fund Partnership Agreement, which is also known as a Section 75 Agreement, pursuant to Section 75 of the National Health Service Act 2006, NHS Act 2006, and the NHS Black Country Integrated Care Board. Is there a seconder?
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you. I will now open it up to debate. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you. Are the recommendations set out in paragraph 2 of the report agreed? That is carried. As there is no further business, that concludes this meeting of